perfect plan. But we in our flesh have sometimes gotten it all mixed up. Oftentimes we forget who made us and what we were made for. And we begin to think that that which we are good at somehow makes us better than somebody who may not be gifted in the same way. Oh, we say it all belongs to God, and it's not about us, it's not about me, it's about God. But when we're honest with ourselves, many of us gain our feeling of significance and prominence by seeing ourselves more highly than we ought. That's what's at the very core of racism. Somebody who is different from another somebody begins to discount a person's differences and somehow sees that person as less than they are in the eyes of God. Yes, sometimes we tend to think of ourselves more highly than we ought. Oh, I know I'm right about it, and if you don't believe me, just check out your conversation. If most of what you talk about is what you did, or what you have, or who you know, or what you think you do well, or how important your family is, you just might have a problem with your view of yourself. You know, I grew up in an era where you really weren't supposed to brag about yourself. Okay, I mean, really, you weren't. You never were supposed to talk about what you did good. That was supposed to be left to others to do. But today, that's just not necessarily so. Now, to be sure, we do all have to encourage ourselves. Because the old saying says there's a poor frog that don't praise his own pond. And we shouldn't wait around for somebody else to praise us. Sometimes we have to encourage ourselves. But if we're not careful, we can take that encouragement, we can take that praise to an extreme that turns into conceit and selfishness and self-centeredness. And our view of ourselves becomes distorted and dangerous. Thema Bryant Davis, a preacher and theologian, said, "Don't be fooled by those who overcompensate for insecurity by bragging. See through the hype." I love her. I always say that we often operate at the extremes. Either we think we're better than everybody else, or we go to the other extreme and we think we're less than everybody else. But the truth is, we're really somewhere in between the two extremes. And we should never operate at any extreme, because when we do, we lose the sensitivity that we need to have in order to be of service to God and to God's people. When we think we're better, we don't have the patience or the desire to help make somebody else better. We don't know how to give back to help somebody else along the way. We tend to relish in our greatness and in how blessed we are to possess all of these great gifts. And let's face it, we can begin to like the fact that others seem to be beneath us, at least in our opinion. I heard it said that instead of talking badly about people, simply learn the lesson their life teaches, and if you can, lend them a hand. We all have to learn how not to see ourselves as higher than anyone else, but to recognize that maybe God gifted us in a certain area so that we could help someone who may be lacking in that area. And likewise, we should never beat ourselves up because we're not as educated as the next one, or as attractive by the world's standards as the next person, or as talented or as gifted as another person. We have to spend time learning about who we truly are so we can bring forth the real gifts that God gave us. Because